Welcome to 365 Saturday España. This session will be, we'll talk about Business Central, and in particular, we'll see some tips for improving your Dynamics 365 Business Central environment on-premise and obviously on SaaS. Thanks to the sponsor to this event. Thanks to them because this event can be possible only without some important sponsor that we have. And a very quick presentation about me. My name is Stefano Demiliani. I'm from Italy. I'm a Master MVP on Business Application. I work as a CTO and as a solution architect for AD and Navlab, a company in Italy. I'm a trainer for Microsoft and also an author of books for patent publishing. You can reach me on LinkedIn and on Twitter. This is my contact for quick reach me on the socials. A brief overview of Business Central. Business Central is the Microsoft last ERP. It's a cloud-based ERP today, available also on-premise, but the cloud is obviously the future. And you should start see Business Central as one of the main building blocks of a more big ecosystem that will span across all the Office 365 and Dynamics 365 and Microsoft 365 applications. So remember that Business Central is not a long word, but you should start thinking on an integrated ecosystem with all the Microsoft platforms. So Azure, Office 365, Power Platform, and so on. I want to emphasize in this slide the bottom part where we will talk about that and we'll listen always more about them in the future. It's the common data service that it's like a bridge between all these applications, and Business Central is going always more on common data service. In this session, we'll talk about a tenant, how to administer a tenant at best, and tips and tricks for improving performances on a Dynamics 365 Business Central tenant. So first, a quick introduction about what there's under the hood of a tenant when you create an environment or a trial environment. Business Central is based on Azure SQL as a backend. In particular, Azure SQL Database Elastic Pools is the engine that drives Business Central tenant. And Azure SQL Elastic Pool is a solution that permits you to manage and scale multiple databases by sharing resources. A pool in Azure is defined by a tier, service tier, a size in DTU. Size means a power that you can have for your database instance, and obviously a limit of power for database. This set of resources defines what is called a pool, and when you declare a pool, an elastic pool, you specify a set of resources that all the different databases will share between them, and the platform is responsible to scale automatically this database. So if you have a database that uses low DTUs, for example, because it's not working too much in this moment, more power is available for other DTU in the same pool. And Azure, the Azure engine of Azure SQL Database is responsible for moving database between pools based on the usage of the database. And for example, when you activate a trial, Business Central trial, you can do that. If you activate a trial, the trial is automatically created on what is called a standard tier. So a service level where you don't have performances too much on disk and so on. And when you switch your trial to a paid subscription, your database is moved automatically from a standard tier to a premium tier, where you have much more performances, much better performances, much hardware, much powerful hardware available, and so on. What is responsible to moving this database to a pool to another is what is called the control plane. That is an application, a microservice application that handles the automatic scaling and moving of your database inside different elastic pool tiers. When a new customer signs up for Business Central, this customer, to this customer is assigned what is called a data plane cluster. The data plane cluster is a set of resources that creates your environment. And the data plane cluster is normally actually composed of 5 VMs, virtual machines. Each VM contains all the pieces of that permits you to run Business Central, so web client and the service tier and so on. And scaling can be handled up and down automatically by adding more VMs to this cluster according to the needs that you have. And the data plane cluster when you create a tenant, the tenant is a multi-tenant environment. So automatically, when you activate a tenant, it's created a data plane cluster, and it's created a customer database and the app database. The app database is shared between customers on the same tenant. And the data plane is split into geographical regions. So it's split into the world according to the localization that you create. And these regions are not actually physically mapped on all the Azure regions. But remember that if you activate a tenant, for example, in Europe, the data will live in Europe. So your data plane cluster and your database are creating the Europe regions. The control plane service is instead the service that manages all of this infrastructure. So it's responsible for creating the data plane cluster, for creating and activating the database of the tenant, and then also for post operations like upgrade the tenant, installing extensions, deleting extensions, deleting the database, and so on. Also, the control plane is spanned between regions world. So you have a service that is spanned between regions. So for you, it's actually always available because it's replicating in geographically, and also it's based on a pool of virtual machines that permits you to have the service always up. This is what there's under the hood. Now we start talking about Business Central. So what I showed before is all managed by Azure and by Microsoft automatically. Now we want to talk about what as a partner or as customer we have to do when we need to manage a tenant. The first point for managing a tenant as an end user or as a partner is the admin center, Business Central admin center. The admin center is your single point of administration. It's a portal that permits you to manage environments and all the administrative tasks that are under these environments. And we'll see that live now. So this is my Business Central environment, as you can see online. The admin center is available by clicking here and click on admin center. You are redirecting to your admin center that is also reachable by appending the tenant ID /admin in the URL, like here. And this is my admin center. The admin center has a panel on the left that permits you access to a set of functionalities. The first available are the environment tab. The environment tab permits you to create environments inside your tenant. So here is where you create a production environment or a Sandbox environment. The Sandbox environment is the environment that you can use for testing or for development of something like that, or for demos and trainings and so on. You can have free production environment and free Sandbox environments. Free and free, not 6 in total, not 5 production and 1 Sandbox, but free and free. Each database can have a maximum size of 80 gigabytes as default. This can be done up by raising a request to Microsoft. And for here, you can create environment. Create the environment is very simple. You can click on new. You can give the environment name, and then you can select if you want a production environment or a Sandbox environment. If I create a production environment, I can select the country, the localization for my environment. For example, I can select AS if I want a Spanish environment, and I can select one of the available version for my environment. Actually, this is the version deployed on SaaS, so it permits you to choose only this environment. If you create a production environment, is created for you. If instead you create Sandbox, when you create the Sandbox, you always can select the country, the version for your environment available, and you can also select if you want a copy. This Sandbox must be a copy on another environment. For example, if you want, you can create a Sandbox by copying a production environment. And this means that the Sandbox is not created by using crawls data as default, as the default value if you don't set copy environment, but the Sandbox is created as a copy of the production environment. This can be useful, for example, if you want to troubleshooting or debugging some problems that a production environment can have. Obviously, the time to create the environment can be much quicker or much longer according to the data that you have in the copied environment. You can also delete environment, obviously. From each environment, you can access the data of this environment. Here you can go directly to the environment, so it opens directly the environment. If you click the environment name, you are into the details of this environment. It means that it is the name, it is a set of information, so where the environment is creating, the localization, the size of the database, and other details that we'll see later. In the top bar, you have a set of things that you can do on your environment. For example, the first important things to do is that you can create a schedule update and set the update window. This means that when you are on a cloud environment, Microsoft is responsible to update your environment. And so Microsoft is, when Microsoft will release a new Business Central version, normally at least every month, it goes to each tenant, and for each tenant updates the environment. Obviously, you receive a notification. We'll talk about that later. And when you have this notification available, if the proposed data for the upgrade is not available, is not okay for you, you can change one of these parameters. First parameter is you can change the update window. So the update windows means that it's the time of the day when the updates are applied by Microsoft to your environment, and during this time, the environment could be not available for you. So it's absolutely recommended to specify a set of start and end time where your customer is not working. Don't do that in working hour. And you can specify that for each environment, and then you can also schedule the update. So if Microsoft proposes you an update, if you have an update available, now I don't have an update available for this environment, you can here schedule the update, because maybe Microsoft asks you that it plans to upgrade your environment from this date to this date, and this is not okay for you because you are doing some work on the environment, or your customer is in a critical period. So you can reschedule the update, suggest to Microsoft another period. It's extremely important to receive notification. So I go back there later, but you are be alerted for notification only if you are inserted into the notification repository of the tenant. So extremely important to add your email address here, to at least to all the administrators that must receive notification from Microsoft, because here you will receive each type of notification for the tenant upgrade, but also notification about problems. For example, if you have extensions installed that breaks an upgrade of a tenant. So please remember to add here your email address. Related to environment, I go again in my environment. Related to environment, you can also do other things. Another interesting thing that you can do is to create a database export. So this means that you can export the backup of your database. The database is automatically created by Microsoft and exported to you to a Azure Blob Storage. So it opens a window where it asks you to provide an Azure Blob Storage key. So the first thing that you have to do is to create an Azure Blob Storage account. When you create an Azure Blob Storage account, it gives you a key that you have to provide here when you create the export window, and this will be the account where the backup will be stored for you directly. And you can view your export history here. So exporting backup is interesting because you can do, for example, troubleshooting online or offline, or you can create a database. There are many customers that want these features to create an offline database for data analysis, for example. But it's a feature available. Another interesting section that you can do today is manage the sessions. So in these sections, you can see this section. You can see all the sessions connected to this database. So all your users connected, and this is the way in a cloud environment where you can, for example, kill sessions that are idle or kill sessions that are blocking other users. Because here you can see the list of the sessions, and then you can click cancel the selected sessions and delete the customers. I don't have session connected because I'm connected to this production environment. If I select production environment, you can see that I have 2 sessions connected, and I can cancel one of these sessions if I don't want. I want to kill a session. Interested, especially to avoid blocks or killing users. Another interesting features that you can have connected to an environment is, for example, the Manage Apps. Manage Apps sections lists all the available apps that you have in your tenant, apps that comes from Microsoft or from the app source, not per tenant extension here, not only app source apps. And it checks if there are upgrades for these apps, and if so, it proposes you the installed version, the latest available versions, and the actions to take, upgrade or not. And here, this is a quick way to check if you have upgrades available for your apps that you have maybe installed from app source, and directly from here, click upgrade, and so on. So it's, I think it's quite very interesting and useful features. Another feature that I want to show here, always connected to environments, is you can open support request. If you have a problem, it opens a portal based on Power Portal, where you can open a support request directly to Microsoft, or you can also report a production outage. Production outage means that from a production environment, if you are totally out of your environment for a certain period, you can signal that to Microsoft, and they will react immediately because this production outage will go to a different road and they will alert directly the Microsoft engineers. And you can also manage your subcontract applications. The last thing that I want to show here is, we'll talk about that later, but you can also handle telemetry. Telemetry is available here, the telemetry tab as a simple log, but the new features available is the application insights connections. So you can create on Azure an Azure application insight service and redirect all the telemetry to this application insight service. to do that, for example, if when you have created the application insights service, you click here. I have this connected to my production environment. So when you create on Azure the application insights service, it provides you a key, what is called the instrumentation key. And you simply go here, copy the instrumentation key provided by Azure, enable the application insights, and save. And in this moment, all the telemetry is redirected to your application insights key, your application insights instance, and then you can analyze this telemetry on Azure. We'll see that later. Remember that the first time that you do enable the application insights, your tenant, your environment is restarted. So please enable this only when during non-working hour, or at least alert your user, because there's 1 minute or something like that where the environment is not available for your user because it's restarted. This is a quick, very quick overview of the admin center, what you can do here. Extremely important. I remember to manage and remember that. Now I want to go to other topics. We saw before that we can create Sandbox and production environment very quickly. A Sandbox can be also a copy of the production environment, but remember that Sandbox and productions are not the same environment under the hoods. So they can be similar, but are not the same environment under the hoods. So Sandbox runs on a different performance tier than a production environment, totally different. A production environment runs on a premium tier, while Sandbox not. It's a standard tier. Production environment are protected by automatic backups that are retained for 20 days. So there are lots of backups during the day and then for 30 days. These automatic backup features are not applied to Sandbox environments. So if you have sensitive data on Sandbox environment, remember that you don't have all the automatic backup features that you have on a production environment. When you create a Sandbox from a production environment as a copy of the production environment, remember that there are some steps that are automatically applied to your Sandbox. So the job queue is automatically stopped. Any base application integration settings that you have are cleared. And the outbound HTTP calls that your extensions can do are automatically blocked by default. And so you need to go on each extension, test to manage page, and then enable the allow HTTP calls. Otherwise, are not enabled by default. And an important tips that I want to recommend is that if you are doing simulations, performance simulation, for example, performance testing, or if you are doing trainings maybe, or testing with sensitive data that your customer might preserve, it's much better to create a second production environment and use that second production environment as your training environment or your simulation environment than using a Sandbox. Don't do performance testing between Sandbox and production because they are totally different environment, and so you don't tell real data. And also don't do testing or training with sensitive data on a Sandbox. If you want to preserve and you have the secure of your data, it's much better to use another production environment. Other things about Sandbox and production are different is that you can have an environment where you have, imagine that you have a Sandbox environment and a production environment. Each environment is the same, so you have a set of extensions installed on the production environment and on the Sandbox environments, and each extension has its own data. This is before an upgrade of a tenant. When Microsoft applies an upgrade of your tenant, so from version X to version Y, for example, the situation is this. So after the upgrade, production environment is automatically the same. So you have all the sessions published, your data and so on. On a Sandbox environment, you have the environment is like a standard clones, a standard application. Your extensions are not automatically installed. Your data are here, but your extensions are not automatically installed, and you need to republish them manually. Why this? Because if you publish an extension in Sandbox environment, this extension is published in what is called the scope of the service node that is hosting the Sandbox. So it's a local scope for the service node that hosting the Sandbox. While this is not true for the production environment. So when you are on a Sandbox, when Microsoft upgrade the tenants to a new version, the Sandbox is moved to another service node that runs the new application version. So the database is moved to another service that runs on Azure. And in this new service node, you don't have your extensions. So the extensions from the original Sandbox are unpublished because in the new service node, you don't have these extensions, but data are preserved. So if you publish and install the extension again, your data are live and your situation is exactly like before, that you are upgraded and your data are available. This is different instead compared to production environment. When you publish an extension in the production environment, the extensions are published on what is called the global scope. And this means that during the tenant upgrade, all your extensions are automatically downloaded and installed into the production database. And then you will never have the situation where you have to reinstall extension or the extension disappeared. This is the main difference. When you upgrade the Sandbox, this is moved from a database to another, to a service node to another. This is not happens on a production environment. Now we want to talk about some interesting features that you can, in my opinion, use for handling your performance, much better handling your performance of a tenant. The first feature that I want to talk is the data compression. Data compression means that you can, if you have a large database, you can compress your data. And especially this is much more available for on-premise, used for on-premise, I think. SQL Server supports two types of compression, so row level compressions and page level compressions. Row level compression means that if you have some data, these are always compressed to the real size instead of the declared size. For example, if you declare a variable of text 30, and you have 5 characters on this variable, this is compressed to the 5 instead of 30. The page level compression is another more advanced level of compression that applies row level plus other types of compressions. Data compression is supported from Business Central version 14, and it permits you to improve your performances and reduce sensitivity, the size of your database. And the AI language, you can specify if you have a table and an heavy table, you can have properties that are compression types that permits you to specify the types of compression that this table must have. Default is none, so no compression, but you can specify if you want to page or row compressions. For the classical question is I have to use page level compression or row level compression. Normally, my suggestion is to use page level compression on tables like ledger tables, postal sales, and purchase documents, and on archive tables, because it's much more performance and much more used. You can also evaluate that if you are on you have access to your SQL, so if you are on premise, because you can simply run a native stored procedure that is SP, estimate data compression savings, where you can specify the type of compression in your table, And it suggests you that, for example, in this example, I'm checking my item ledger entry tables, and if I apply the page level compression, the size goes to 54152, while if I apply row level compression, is reduced like 50%, while in the first case, applying page level compression is 4 times reduced. So it's much better in my case to apply page level compression. And you can do that, test that, and remember that this permits you to save a lot of space inside your database. So it's very interesting to use if you are on premise, or if you are on SaaS, for example, to decrease the size of your database. Remember that, especially for your SaaS, for on-premise, the data compression can cause an increased load on your CPU. So please turn up your CPU accordingly. I talk about telemetry and application insights. That's the other topic that I want to show. We saw that how to configure. Now I want directly goes to a quick demo. Quick demo I have here in my Azure portal. I have created an instance of application insights. This is the instrumentation key that Azure provided me, that I have connected to my environment as shown before. As you can see here, when you are connected, all your telemetry is redirected here. So you can have automatically the telemetry sent to application from your tenant to application installed, redirected here. And from this instance, you can manage, monitor all. I have, for example, a set of dashboards. Actually, not all the telemetry is sent to application insights. So Microsoft sends to application insights long-line queries, web service call, logs, and other sessions and other types of telemetry, but not all the entire telemetry. They are always upgrading this, so expect more about that. If I go on my dashboards, I have here a set of dashboards. For example, I want to show this dashboard. Not this dashboard, sorry, long-running queries, for example. These are predefined dashboards that you can Microsoft provides to you, and that permits you to immediately see your environments, what are the long-running queries that are running, and if you have some queries that are performing not so bad, so better, you can click and go inspect the details of this. So this is a dashboard, so it monitors. If you can go much more in details by going on logs, and you can have a set of these dashboards. So this is for long-running queries. There's a dashboard for web service calls that permits you to check top 10 expensive calls, the distribution of calls, and so on. If I don't have data here to show, but if you have web service call, you can monitor them. You can have dashboard for sessions, number of sessions that are connected, so list of sessions and the number of sessions connected, so you can monitor the usage of your tenants directly from here and something like that. So very powerful for monitoring logs directly, and you can also inspect logs more in depth, as you can see later. What I want to show you now is that you can also use the application inside SDK for sending your custom telemetry. Microsoft actually has not provided this feature natively. It's a work in progress, but you can do that just now by using the application inside SDK. And in this example, if I go to my environment here, I created a simple extension that, sorry, I logging. I create an extension that simulates an operations. So imagine that I have a long-running process that works on items, and when selected, it creates a set of barcodes for my items, a set of packages. It creates packages and then sends shipments. So imagine a long running process that I want to monitor because performances are not better, and I want to monitor this process directly from application insights because it's my online monitor that permits you to monitor all my customers. So in this demo, I am creating here an action, start packaging process. I run this action. This is actually a long running process, so it's working now. It requires, I think, 2 or 3 minutes to complete, if I remember the time. I leave that running. I will go inside this extension. This is the extensions. So there's the action that runs. This is the action on my page, start packaging process, that runs this method. And inside these methods, I'm using, this extension is using, I go here. The extension is using the application insights SDK that is available from Microsoft on GitHub. And here this is my process. And my process is as a set of iterations, because imagine that this process runs for a set of items, and it's split on a set of functions. For first step is retrieve the items, assign barcodes for each items, create the pallet, store the pallet, post the shipments, and something like that. And I want to monitor all these steps. So what I'm doing here is on the main steps, I'm sending to application insights a logging. Start function execution means that is a method that permits you to send to application insight a signal that called packaging, and application insight receive this signal and start monitoring the execution. Here I'm adding also some properties, because to an event you cannot attach properties. Properties means details about these events. For example, here I'm passing a property called iteration with a number. And track execution time is a method that permits you to monitor the execution time from the first line to the end. So I have the complete time execution of all this process. All this process is on steps, and on a set of functions, so retrieve items, find barcodes, and so on. And I want also to monitor these single steps, because my goal here is to monitor performances. So I'm also for each steps, I'm starting the execution by sending an event called retrieve items. I'm passing some properties here because I want to log the item number, the item description, and something like that. And here I track the time. And here I also to properties, I also pass a matrix. Matrix means that data that I can pass. For example, I want to pass here the numbers of items retrieved, because it permits you to monitor and then doing statistical analysis on that. And I do that for each of these steps, because I want to monitor. So each step has start function execution, track execution time, and add properties of matrix if I pass parameters. As you can see here, all these steps have that. What happens now is that, okay, the packaging course is completed. If I go to application insights here, here I go to application insights. That's my application insights instance. I want to, for example, monitor my logs. This is where you can monitor your log, and you can monitor all your type of telemetry. Here, when I want to monitor my custom events, because these are not events set by Microsoft, but oops, sorry, here I want to monitor my custom events. You can apply filter, last 24 hours or last, I don't know, I'm running last 3 days, for example. Click run. query is executed. Sorry, I don't select the query. Query is executed, and it retrieves all your set of signals that were sent to application insights. And as you can see here, this is my item sent. So I have, for example, retrieve items that has a duration of this, and the 99 items retrieved are these. I have the packaging, the post shipment, the assigned barcodes, and so on. And for each of these methods, I have the durations because I want to do the duration, and I have some details. So if I want to go in depth, for example, I don't know, assign barcodes is the event that has a much more long duration. I can see here the details, what is sending, client that's sending these details, all my custom measurements, so all my logs that I send to these logs, to these signals. For example, here you can see that barcodes created at 27 and the duration is this. And so you have a complete monitoring directly from here. And you can also create metrics. A metric means that you can create custom metrics. So for example, I can create the average duration, for example, means that I have I can see that the average duration of my signals are these, and you can also create a set of graphics and split these graphics and something like that. So I think it's very interesting, and you can also apply that to dashboard and monitor all your tenants directly in this way. Application Insights is very powerful, and I suggest to use them for monitoring your application and for logins. Okay, we go out. Talking about another interesting features that I want to suggest you to start using, and it's what is called the read scale out. I think that it's quite a hidden features because not very published and not very known by everyone, but it is absolutely very powerful. And the read scale out means that Azure SQL natively supports the read scale out features. Read scale out means exactly that it provides you on the premium tier, if you have on premium business critical or hyperscale tier, it provides you a read-only replica of your database automatically for you, enabled by default. So you have your primary database and the read-only replica that is automatically replicated for you from the production database, or the main database. And on the SaaS environment with Business Central, the read scale out feature is automatically enabled by default. And if you have long-running processes that reads data, or if you are doing data analysis processes, ETL processes, and so on, instead of querying the main database where your users are working and where you have right transactions, locking, and so on, it's much more performant and it's much better to use the read-only replica. And this is enabled by default. So how you can do that? In Business Central, reports, queries, and API pages have new properties available called data access intent, where you can specify if you want to use the read-only replica or not. So specifying data access intent read-only means that, for example, this is a report. This report will not run inside the production database, inside the database where your users are running, but it runs in the read-only replica. So it's not affected by locking, it's not affected by users, and if it requires long time to run, your user will never see that. So it's absolutely very powerful. You can do that on reports, on queries, and also on API pages. So if you have API pages that only shows data, not writing data, it's a very powerful feature to specify data access intent read-only. You can also control the data access intent also via user interface. So for example, standard reports like here, customer order summary, customer order details, customer summary aging, or something like that, where you have to read data and As default, as you can see here, the access intent is a primary database. But if you want to improve performance, you can specify read-only, for example. So if you specify read-only, this report will run inside not the primary replica, but inside the read-only replica. And your performances are much, much better. So the default means that the objects use the verify access intent, so what you are specifying the objects itself. Allow write means that we use the primary database. Read-only means that we will use the read-only replica. How to use that on-premise? On-premise means that first things that is that you need to enable the read-only replica on your database. In this demo, I've created an Azure SQL database just to show some things. I've created an Azure SQL database, and if you can see here, this Azure SQL database is created on a premium tier, and the rescale is enabled as default. So just go on Azure and create database exactly like done by Microsoft when you create a tenant. And from what I want to show here is that if I connect from Management Studio to this database, is this? Okay, I can go on options, and on additional connection parameters, I can specify application intent read-only. This means that Management Studio, but also your application, if you have an external application and you provide a connection string, if you append this application intent equals read-only in the connection string, when you click on connect, you are connected. It's totally transparent for you, but you are connected to a database. But no, it's not the primary database, it's the read-only replica. So if, for example, I create a query, and maybe I can open and just previously created query for improving. Sorry, I tried, if I remember, I just created this query. Okay. If, for example, I create this query, yes, I have to use inside using, but we can do also that for as is, just to speed up the file. I forgot the use and the number of the name of the database. We can do that like here in this way. So select is a read-only operations, so it can select my customers. But if I specify another query, the insert, okay, the insert now I use. If I try to insert data, what happens now is that the operation is failed because the database is read-only. So this is exactly like what is done by specifying the data access intent properties in your IEL objects. It uses the read-only replica of your database. You can read your data, totally transparent for you, but if you try to perform an insert operation or a modify operation or a delete operation, you are locked because you cannot do that. But it's much, much more performance than using the primary database, because in this way you are not affected by users, and your operations will never be locked, and your users will go much, much more speedy. So these are some tips. I hope that will useful. As a very last things, I want also to show that another quick new features. Sorry, I have to open a new window here, a new file here, and you can also, we saw before that we can use the administration of a tenant for managing your environment, but you can also You can also do that on PowerShell from version 16. So, here, for example, you can also do that from PowerShell because also the admin center now has API available. So, for example, you can directly via PowerShell or something like that have a list of the environments by calling this API. Do modifications on the environment. For example, I want to set the application inside key. I can create this API by passing the application inside key as a JSON object. I can set the upgrade window, get and set the upgrade window directly programmatically. I can create new environment programmatically. So without going to application insights. For example, here I can create a new sandbox called my new sandbox by calling this API and by passing the environment type and the country code that I want. I can create a copy, the production environment to a sandbox, for example, and so on. You can do more than that, all by PowerShell. So you can also automate these things. And it's extremely useful if you have to manage a lot of customers in the cloud and you want to maybe automate the creation of environments and so on without accessing physically the environment. I suggest to do it a check. It's quite new features available and some other more features will be added in the next feature. So that's all for me. I hope to have give a quick overview of these interesting features. Thank you very much for having me on these events. Have a nice weekend, and I think that you can have more other details about Business Central in the other sections that my colleague will share in these events. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.